Sox fans, welcome back to Good Guys Talk Back, episode 230, if you can believe it. This is our fifth year doing this. It looks like we're going to be starting up a new rebuild, which we'll get to in a little bit. I am Nick Murawski. You can find this fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere. On Sunday nights, we do it live on our YouTube channel. You can subscribe to that channel, follow, check in, join in the comments, whatever you'd like to do. We do appreciate it. The audio is available everywhere. Chopping all this up with me, my dear friend. Man, we've known each other for a long time, and I can't believe we're in this situation once again with this White Sox team. Pat Hester, hello, sir.
Hey, Nick, welcome to hell. How are you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. It's not where we thought we'd be.
No.
If you want a real chuckle, like I've said, go back and listen to our prediction show before the season started, where you and I were predicting 90 plus wins.
Sure.
And it was going to be hunky dory, and we're just going to cruise to a Central Division championship. Yet we find ourselves selling off, and 20 is it 20 games under?
There's 20 games under now.
20.
Yeah.
I lost count.
Yeah.
How silly of me. But again, like I mentioned in my tweet earlier, only 11 games back. So we could still find a way to claw our way back into this.
It's a very forgiving division. Very forgiving.
It is like playing a golf course with zero sand traps. There's no water on it. And
you can hit 3 fairways over and still be able to get
but everything like funnels towards the fairway. So if you're left, it's going to bounce and roll right in the center of the fairway. Right, boom, right. Yeah. Everything funnels in. Beautiful.
Yeah. Sox are 43 and 63, as Pat mentioned, 11 games out of that division. So new culture, new team. I don't know.
Vibes are back, I'm hearing.
Since vibes are back.
TA hit a home run. Can we trade
back
for more vibes?
I would love to trade for more vibes. Bring in Yolmer, Gold Glove Yolmer, putting the ice bucket on his head, bring back the legend, all those great vibes, just everybody with positive vibes, bring them all back. If they can, if they're not preoccupied with some other opportunity at a different club level
or something.
I don't know what those guys are up to, but since the last time we talked, Sox were swept in that 2-game series by the Cubs. And it's a new look team. They traded off, 3 guys. It could be more, could be happening right now as we're talking. There's a lot of rumors with the deadline coming up very soon. I want to get to a lot of different stuff. I guess first thing, we'll get to Lance Lynn and Joe Kelly being moved and Kendall Graveman and what the Sox have gotten back and, some of the language of what's happening with this team. But was there an anger level? Was there a disappointment? How did you react to the Sox getting beat in both games? One was just an absolute embarrassment. I mean, they were both awful, but you're up 7-2 in the fourth and you just implode. What were your thoughts on that, on the Sox losing both of those to the Cubs?
It doesn't really grind my gears, Nick. I'll tell you why, because it's just so far gone from anywhere kind of, they're not in this race, even though I jokingly said, 11 games back. And there's no reason to have any kind of hope or really even interest in that series. I mean, honestly, it was dead man walking, really, if you're the White Sox. And yeah, that game, they were up 7, I think it was 7-2, and you felt kind of good about it. It would have been nice. It's always nice to beat the Cubs, but they're, again, like usual, they're 2 ships passing in the night right now. You've got a team that's, other than their loss today, playing really good baseball and now have gone from probably seller mode to probably a buyer mode before the deadline is here and gone. So that's where they're at. We're a ship going in a different direction. So do I get upset about it? Not really. I could care less. If somebody wanted to say, I think maybe somebody tweeted about it. Was it you? Maybe no. I think I saw a tweet. Somebody said they're wearing their Sox gear, and the Cub fan came up to them and said, Sox suck, and they just said, yeah, all right, yeah, I get it. They suck. There's nothing I can do about it. They're just terrible. So it is what it is. I don't know. Did you get really, were you like, pounding your table and getting upset and throwing, cans of soda around your house? I mean, what was your reaction?
Well, I'm always reminded by something that you had said and that we've talked about, that the Sox, had the opportunity to take this city by storm. They had the opportunity to really put something together. And if you were ever going to be the baseball team of the city, which still, even if the Sox had multiple playoff opportunities year after year, they got to a World Series, they maybe even won a World Series during this first rebuild. I still don't know if they would have been absolutely Chicago's baseball team because of how far ahead the Cubs are in, with just the culture and everything that is supposed of Chicago with deep dish pizza and everything like that, the Chicago Cubs, but they didn't do anything. The Sox missed their opportunity to even try to get the attention, to try to say, hey, we've got exciting players. We've got the merchandise. We've got, the South Side culture, that changed the game. We want to be this city's team. We want you to think of the White Sox when you think of Chicago, and we're going to do it by success, by putting a winning team together, capitalizing on what we tore down in December of 2016. It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't really bother me because it's like, I know where my fandom is. And I think that bothered me years ago, when I was just, a madman in my 20s and you had one few too many drinks. And before you knew it, you're exchanging haymakers,
with Big Will. When you and I ran into a gentleman that he was Cubs fan at the Sox Cubs game on the South Side, and the gentleman that was you and I put together, like if we were standing side by side, this was the man's width, and
it was a mountain of a
Big
man.
Will, and we talked to Big Will all the way down the ramps, and I think it ended with, I think we were throwing things at each other's cars at the end of the night, like two pirate ships.
Who knows? I mean, it's just dumb stuff you do. But that's what I think of. Like when that series happened, it's just like, man, what could have been for this White Sox team in this city for the local attention? And we missed it. We absolutely missed that opportunity. And as you said, it looks like the Cubs, are doing well for themselves right now. What are they going to do at the deadline? They're in a pretty good spot. And I had a feeling they would be after what they did in the off season and some of the young guys that they've been showcasing. And so that's where I'm at with that. Absolutely dejecting, but it's more of what's happened to the Sox as a culture, as a team, as an organization. Absolutely a gut punch to lose to the Cubs like that. But altogether, what we saw this week and how Giolito was dealt and Lopez was dealt, that to me, people ask me, oh, were you upset that Giolito was gone? Were you surprised? I'm not surprised. Sure, I'm upset, but I'm more upset of like what the lack of success that this organization had since, they acquired Lopez and Giolito for Adam Eaton in 2016. 2 playoff wins. Okay, that's what we got. And then we had to start tearing things down. And someone said, on social media, like, well, can you really call it a rebuild if they never really got to the promised land? Yeah, you can, because they actually tried to build something. They built something. Okay. And it didn't work out. It failed. So now they've got to try again.
It was a built house without a roof and windows. It looked really nice when you go, oh, and that house gets a roof on it and some windows. That's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And they just said, this is probably good enough. This is probably good enough. It's probably not going to rain.
Wash up by the river or the lake in the backyard. They don't need actual indoor plumbing. It rarely rains in this area, so we don't need to worry about a roof. They can defend themselves from, it's just absolutely astonishing. Yeah, and so whether you want to call it a remodel or a retool or a rebuild, whatever you want to call it, it is not what we thought was going to happen way back when. Again, it wasn't finished. It was not finished when they had an opportunity to do the capstone, to really put the big pieces together. They didn't. Money was spent. It was just allocated in weird ways, putting that much money into a bullpen and they didn't go all in on certain guys when they needed to. They tried to play a different type of game. It was a classic Jerry was playing a Jerry game and was not willing to play the game of other, potential free agents that could come to the South Side to really finish this thing off. And then obviously injuries. And I think the lack of development. The Sox do a horrible job at developing players. And for whatever reason, these guys that we were, promised about, they didn't pan out. And that happens. There's no guarantees. I said, Pat, on a recent Lockdown episode, it's like, no one wants to hear about this, but I'm going to say it. If you lived through the 2005 World Series and you still have your hat or shirt around, put it on every now and then, because that actually happened. That was real. Okay, that really happened. It wasn't promised. It wasn't like this prospect's gonna be the next greatest thing in all of baseball, or this guy's got a plus this and a plus that. No. This happened. This really happened. All this promise stuff of what could be, man, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, and Nick, I look at too, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, you could, and if I'm, Jerry Jr. over here, I'm saying, well, why do we need to spend all that money? Why do we need to be aggressive? Look at the Mets. Look at what's going on with the New York Mets right now, selling off Scherzer, selling off everything that they can right now, because their explosion of expenditures that they put into this offseason, and where they were the darlings really of the offseason for the most part, their plan tremendously failed. So could you imagine if we were New York Met fans today, Nick? And we went into this season with high expectations, but we also went into it with knowing, well, we really still haven't addressed anything. It's only because we still think we have more talent than the rest of the division. Where on the flip side, you would go into it as a Mets fan and you'd say, there is no way we're not winning this. Look at the players that we have. This is going to be amazing. I can't wait for the season to start, because we're just going to bludgeon everybody. And it went completely south on them. So it doesn't make anything one better than the other, but it's interesting that you could have that conversation and go, just because you spend a lot of money doesn't mean it's going to be great. But I think where we talked about before, not filling in the holes where you need to fill in, when everything seemed great around it, that was the time to really go and say, maybe we don't need the highest, paid player in the league. Maybe we don't need the move. We don't need to do that, but we need to be aggressive on something. We've identified X as a position of need, and we are going to do everything we can to get it one or two or three of these players that are available for us. And they just continued to say, man, we'll see if we can piecemeal it together with an Oscar Colas. We'll see what we got like 3 or 4 players that could probably play second base for us. As long as we don't have to count on those guys, we should be fine. And you and I have talked about it too. We talked about, well, as long as you have to rely on a Lenine Sosa or a Roman Gonzalez, then you should be fine at second base. As long as you don't have to rely on an Oscar Colas, he can just develop along with the team. And it came down to it where there's just too many holes in this team. There were guys that were promised to come back and return to accustomed levels that we had heard about, which whatever that really means for a team that never reached.
How about just levels?
Yeah.
Just
a high level. I guess just not being hurt every other day. Though that's what we had become accustomed to, and we're just hoping again. So it'll be really interesting, Nick, to see where this franchise goes in the offseason, because they can say all they want about a retool, right? Or whatever it is, or a tweak. We're just going to make little tweaks here and there. But right now, you've traded off enough pieces that you really have to go out now and spend a lot of money if you're going to plan on being competitive next year, regardless of the division that you think you're in, where it's a winnable division, because you weren't even able to win it this year when it was extremely winnable when you had more talent. So you're going to have to go out and be aggressive, which this team has never shown to be aggressive in the offseason in terms of free agency. And we know that the pipeline, I don't know where they're ranked right now, their system, but it's got to be lower third of the league, if not almost.
They've moved up. They've moved up recently because of the acquisitions that they've had from the Dodgers and Astros. You're speaking of spending money potential in the offseason, which always gives everyone a laugh if you've been following this team. But our man, Bob Nightingale, the White Sox whisperer, the puppet perhaps of the organization, and Jerry came out with something, a few days ago. The White Sox certainly could be major players in free agency this winter after shedding about $25 million in their 3 trades. Catcher Yasmani Grandal's $18.2 $1.25 million salary is also coming off the books after the season. Thoughts on that?
Well, that's interesting that Kenny was mentioning that. I don't, because he is the mouthpiece of Kenny and Jerry, really, and I think it's a Kenny thing. Is that to, what it coincides with, Nick? What came out recently that came to your inbox?
Get ready for those ticket packages. Who's ready for 2024?
We better get to Bad News Bob. And tell them that we're going to spend some money next year so we can get some people to re-up. What a ridiculous way they do business over there.
Yeah, Greg, good comment. A lot of raises are going to have to be paid out. Guys are hitting certain numbers in their contract. I mean, it's not that easy. And of course, how the White Sox do things, it's just, they're not. They'll say they are. And again, I have to be so critical, cynical, whatever, skeptical, whatever you want to say, just because I know what they're trying to do. They got to get interest up. There's some way that they've got to get you coming out to the park and pique your interest through the off season and allocate some of your personal money, your financing that, hey, I think maybe this is something we want to check in. I think they're going to be competitive. Maybe they could really try it. Nightingale had a write-up, as he always does in Sunday, in the USA Today, and MLB is enjoying a renaissance, as he says, in attendance, climbing 9% more than a year ago. The highest increase since the great home run race of 1998, of course, Sosa and McGuire, and we remember those years. So largest increases, Philadelphia, 40%, Cleveland, 40%, Cincinnati, not a shocker, 38%, Tampa, 31%, and Pittsburgh, who started off really hot at the beginning of the year, they've increased 30%. Only two teams with declining attendance, Washington Nationals, 13%, and your Chicago White Sox, 16%. Some people mentioned, why not Oakland? I don't think Oakland had a great attendance to begin with last year. So it was like, well, there's probably, it doesn't really, the meter, the needle's not moving too much. But two teams in this great renaissance, two teams that are failing drastically, Sox and Nationals.
Yeah, it's a sad state of affairs, Nick, when it comes to that. But you know what? I'm proud of our fans. You know why? Because that's the only way you can send a message, by not spending your hard-earned dollars on a team that you really can't, that isn't putting its hard-earned ability into putting out a product on the field that's going to be a winning product.
Now, Pat, so, you might the business a little bit in terms of where money might be coming in. I mean, do you think ticket sales is a big, slice of the pie, or, is it advertising? Is it, the liquor deals? Is it the food and bev? Is it the TV, the sponsors?
You got to remember I think, and I don't know 100%. Nobody's ever going to know, because you're not going to get a look at their books.
Right.
But the majority of the money, I would imagine, has got to come in from the collective bargaining, right? So that everybody's, and not the collective bargaining, the revenue sharing is what I meant to say. So like I said, at the beginning of this year, every team received $77 million. Every team in Major League Baseball got $77 million before they opened the door, before they sold one ticket. So you get that. That's paying for the majority of, or for most teams, more than your biggest expenditure, which is probably your players, right? So that comes in, and then it's, I don't know, I would have to imagine it's ticket sales, and it's all the revenue you get from concessions and things like that. But when you give, just because you're a major league ball club and you get $77 million right off the bat, that's a pretty good chunk of change, I would have to imagine. And then you're doing any kind of your local TV rights and your radio TV rights, any kind of sponsorship deals that you have that, sometimes depending on when they're up, they grow from year to year. So there's a lot of dollars coming in that are, that you bank on. But I would say that, tickets, yeah, it's nice to have those tickets in there, but it's all the other stuff that comes in with it. Mm-hmm. And you got to remember too, Nick, and I'd have to look this up, and I keep forgetting to look it up, but if I remember correctly, if they stay under the 2 million attendance mark, Jerry doesn't have to pay an extra tax or something like that. So he'd actually probably like to stay under that $2 million.
Yeah,
So
it's
there's a threshold there where if he exceeds, through the gate, then he's got to pay some extra dough. So I think like he always likes to do, right? He likes to just be right around second or third place, make it look like you're trying to win, but not so great that people are going to come out in droves to see your product.
if you ever want to just really go down a rabbit hole, search up the whole deal that Reinsdorf concocted, back in the late '80s or whenever it was at the deadline, and maybe it was past the deadline in the House in Springfield, and who really owns the stadium? Obviously, Jerry doesn't. Illinois Sports Facilities or something, and
I was going to say the Sports Authority.
The sports authorities,
That's
Sport Mart actually
detail.
jumped in at the last second and got the rights. They just don't want to use them. How that whole works, man. And you want to say, oh, Jerry cares. Jerry absolutely cares. No, he doesn't. He does not care. He's willing to take this team to Florida back in the late '80s, threatening until he got what he wanted. He didn't want to pay for it. Sidney, he was a great Sox fan. He goes to most weekend games. He was there this weekend, and he said 28,000, today on Sunday. And that's the thing about, well, you could boycott, right? Really, give it to Jerry, stick it to him. Don't go to games. But people want to go to games. It's where they meet friends, and they spend some of their summer nights and in the weekends with their family. It's a tradition. They might not go to a ton every year, but they picture White Sox baseball in summer. They go hand in hand,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I want to do. And so, listen, be a fan. I fan how you want to fan. Or really say, you know what, you don't earn my money, Jerry. You don't earn my time. You don't earn my money. You got to do it your way. But I can't tell someone, stop going to games, because this is something that they love, because they have connections. This goes on for years and years. If you're a season ticket holder, you might know people in your area that it's a social thing. You get together and you hang out. So I don't see attendance being very great, though, heading into 2024, unless like something monumental happens in the off season.
If you had to put your money on it right now, Nick, your hard-earned cash, your Locked On Sox money, that you earn.
Oh yeah, sure.
The big bags of money that you're bringing in. Would you bet that there would be a Sox Fest this February? This coming February?
I think there will be, because I think there was backlash that there wasn't last year, and I think they really. I don't think they could do it 2 years in a row. I don't think they can do that. I think they would lose even more face, whether they care or not about that. But I think with this new culture, and you got kind of a hint at it from Pedro Grifol this weekend. I'll read you his recent quotes, which I'm sure there's going to be several of them, as this season winds down, especially after the trade deadline. I think you're going to want to get to know some of these new guys, these new faces. It's going to be like 2017 and 2018 all over again. Whether Grifol's still around, I think he will be. I just don't think there's going to be the accountability that we think there should be. We're all looking for, please, somebody, be held accountable for this. And I really don't think it's going to happen. Whether we like it or not, Hahn is still doing this remodel. Whether we like it or not, Grifol is eyeing up talent for 2024. So I think they're going to try to somehow, it's going to have to be a marketing spin with this whole new culture that we're creating. And I think they have to. They somehow have to show to fans that, like, we're just not withholding this. We're gonna fess up, and we're gonna talk, and maybe they do away with some of the Q&A, but I just can't see them canceling it 2 years in a row. So speaking of that culture stuff, by the way, do you think there's going to be a Sox Fest 2024?
If they do, I would think that would be accompanied with some moves, because that's where you'd want to show your shiny new toys, right? So I'd be excited. That would mean that there's some type of desire to be competitive this year. That's what I think anyway, because your words have said that, they're still thoughts, whatever's come through Bob Nightingale, in terms of they still want to be competitive. It's not a rebuild, it's a retool or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
So again, but I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. So if I was to put my hard-earned money on it, I would say no. I would say there's not going to be a Sox Fest this year.
Okay. This was Pedro Grifol after Sunday's loss to the Guardians. Again, Michael Kopech was on the hill for that. We are going to put a roster together for next year. A lot of that starts right now. So we are going to do things a little different. We are looking for a different culture at some point in that clubhouse. Everybody in there, we are all getting evaluated. There's a direction that we want to go, and at times we don't show it out there. At times we do show it. We have to get consistent. This is a good opportunity for everyone to prove to themselves and this organization that they want to be part of this thing moving forward. Prove it. Show me with blood out there on the field that you want to be part of this White Sox team in 2024. It has a lot of Ricky Renteria vibes. It has a lot of, at the beginning of the rebuild vibes of, Ricky's boys don't quit. I mean, Pedro is looking for a certain type of style. And again, maybe he was just not thrilled with the roster that he inherited, the personnel on the field, and it showed. And he's just looks, and he doesn't know what to do. He's baffled. It's like, how did this not go well? Well, I got to get guys, on this team, in this clubhouse that I can coach up, that will buy into my system. And, it sounds like that's what's happening right now moving forward. Now, we still have some time before the trade deadline and all these guys that we've acquired recently. I don't even know who's going to be necessarily ready for 2024. But, here we go. Get ready for, Pedro creating a new culture.
Well, that's interesting that you say that about culture, and it's after guys have left. So do you think that there were some cancers in that clubhouse of guys?
Do you think Lance Lynn was a cancer? Do you think he was part of like a no fun club?
Yeah, I don't know if I want to say that like a Joe Kelly and a Kendall Graveman and a Lance Lynn were part of that, but it's possible. I mean, we're not in the clubhouse every day, Nick. It's just interesting.
How about never? We're unfortunately never in the clubhouse.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know, and there's no secret that you are in on just about everything and read everything a lot more than I do. But when I hear the word culture being thrown around, I haven't heard that talked about a lot until this point. So it's just interesting that we're talking about culture now once other people have left. So to me, that signals that the people that left were a problem with the culture.
I don't know. For some reason, I just feel like Joe Kelly, he might not have had a leg to stand on, sometimes literally and figuratively, just injuries and Kendall Graveman. I don't know. Lance Lynn could be of the three, just a veteran. He's been around, he's seen a lot. He just kind of commands that presence. Maybe he was, do you think he was kind of like a Dallas Keuchel type of thing, that trying to be this leader? And it's like, but your results, man, like look at what you're actually putting out there. We're following you. I don't know. I feel like, but also, Lance Lynn had a personality that just seemed like, no way. It seems like you're up for a good time. So I don't, TA hit his first home run on Saturday. There was a party in the dugout, more for probably him, monkey off the back finally. And they were having fun. The two games that they won against the Guardians Friday with the Tuki Toussaint 5 innings, which, by the way, get used to him. I think he'll be in your 2024 rotation. They need somebody. And Clevenger returned, and he gave you 5 and no walks. And, they had some fun. Berger continues to smash. Robert continues to hit. It looked like they were having a good time on Friday and Saturday. So, I don't know. I don't know what Pedro was getting at with that culture stuff, but it sure seems like I think he's going to be given permission to maybe be involved a little bit more in on-field personnel, perhaps.
Well, and he should be, right? If this is the team, if it's a team that he wants to build in his image, whatever that image is, because I don't really know what or who he is yet at this point. I don't know if it's fair to judge him 100% on not even a full season in as a major league manager, but I think he's got to build a team in his image, and whether it works or not will remain to be seen. But and if there's still that trust and that between him and Rick Hahn, I mean, they were thick as thieves. I think they were sleeping at each other's houses, telling ghost stories at night. They were buddies, they were best friends. Let me tell you a story about my best friend.
Yeah.
And if that's going to be the case, I think, Pedro's got to really, put his thumbprints on what he wants and who he's looking for, because what he has or what he's had hasn't worked. Whatever it was whatever the secret sauce was, prior to some guys being in this lineup, it wore off and it could never be found again. It was just interesting, how fast that great culture that they seemingly had just evaporated.
Yeah. So some guys that came back in these trades, it's all we know is we're recording here on Sunday night is the Lance Lynn, Joe Kelly, Kendall Graveman, getting some catching depth back and some pitching help as well. And an old friend, Trace Thompson.
Oh, thank
right.
goodness.
He's coming back for, I think, his third stint with the White Sox since 2015. So,
how would you feel? How would you feel about that? You're like, oh man, you gotta be kidding. I gotta go
come
back.
On. I thought I was done with this organization. Why do you want me? Why do you want me so bad? I mean, who is it? I would ask, like, give me names. Who is the person in this organization that wants me back all the time? Is it Kenny? I don't know.
It's like a bad relationship. It's like, stop calling me. I don't want to be with you anymore. Would you please leave me alone?
Yeah, it's there's your major league ready outfielder, if you want to call it that. So what are we going to do with Gavin Sheets and all these other out of position guys that are going to be playing the outfield?
On Gavin Sheets.
We'll always be bullish on Gavin Sheets. Yeah. So Thompson's back in the fold, and you got some other guys, maybe a middle reliever, maybe a guy that could be a 3 or 4, as some scouts are saying, some catching depth that, you could read these reports and, you could really read into it however you want to. That's a good thing. I'm excited about that. Or, I don't know. Maybe they're not as polished as we think. I am not going to get up for the letdown this time around. I was, when it was happening the first time, really excited about everybody that was coming back. And I bought into all of the stuff I was reading with the people that were in the know on these prospects. Mm-hmm. Let me tell you, I've got eyes on this guy. They are going to be this. They're going to be that. Wait till you see this guy's power on the south side. This Sox team is going to be a menace for several years. Nothing's a sure thing. I think scouting and drafting is so difficult to do. Sometimes you're just throwing a dart at the wall, I think. And the ones that can do
a lot of those guys put those comments out there because they assume that the development will be there and it'll be at major league standard.
That's an excellent point, Pat. That's an excellent. I'm wondering if some of those quotes are with the caveat of, well, I'm assuming this major league club, this White Sox club, knows how to coach them up and to develop them. And they're putting the modern technology and the advancements and the metrics all into play. And they're setting these players up for success. So I'm assuming they're going to be doing all that. And if they do, they should be at, this level in a couple of years. That is an excellent point. And I don't think that happens in this White Sox organization because we've seen too many players that almost feel like can't misses by so many different prognosticators out there. And it's been a miss, and then how many times do you see a guy go to a different club and it's like, oh, wow, like, looks like they figured it out over there.
Yeah.
So the development has been a problem. And, again, as Clinton said, look, Hahn, Williams, Reinsdorf. I mean, that's the issue when you really boil it down. I feel like as long as Jerry's around, And we're going to be continuing to run into the same problems because he's going to want to keep it so insular. He's going to want his people around him. He is not going to want to bring in other people from different organizations that seem to know really what's going on in baseball and how to do it. He's not going to want that. So this is what we're kind of stuck with. And you're almost hoping then these players rise above, right?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow, despite all of the stuff that might hold them back in the White Sox organization, they can battle through that and rise and overcome that.
Well, you've got that in Luis Robert Jr., right? But he's a special player. I think he's one guy that is showing that he can rise above whatever dysfunction you have. He's like a Frank Thomas was. He was just a superstar.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And was a future Hall of Famer. And I'm not saying that Luis Robert Jr. is going to be in the Hall of Fame, but he seems to be a special enough talent that he can overcome the awful coaching and the development and the, whatever they've tried to preach in terms of hitting coaches that they've had, the hitting room that they implored. But other guys aren't. Other guys need a little bit more hands-on. Other guys need a little bit, I don't know, maybe better conditioning. Ways to keep each other on the field and ways to stay healthy and ways to take maybe being a designated hitter and keeping yourself ready and keeping your legs ready, right? There's just things that need to be taught and done that need to be followed too. I mean, it's got to be on the player at some point as well, but
oh, sure.
Boy, oh boy,
yeah.
this
Frank Thomas has mentioned that,
Yeah.
in some of the, I think it was during the Cubs series in the post game, perhaps on NBC Sports Chicago, Grifol putting it on his shoulders because Hahn refused to talk at the start of the homestand last week. And, this is on me. And Thomas is like, well, okay, that's great that you're saying that, but when is it going to be on the players? These guys that were supposed to perform, these guys that, have back of a baseball card to live up to, or, seriously, you have been touted as X, Y, or Z, and you can't even hit, you can't even meet these metrics. You can't stay healthy. You can't do some of the things that you were supposed to do. And then beyond, no, it's got to be on the players as well.
Yeah. And I want to talk about somebody, and I don't want to switch gears too much, but you and I, we got together on what was that? Friday night. You and I we got together in Wrigleyville.
Oh, yeah.
Not because we wanted to be there. I had a work event and you were nice enough to hang out with me in the heat. And I thank you for that. But somebody that we talked about a little bit was Yohan Moncada, he's a lightning rod in terms of player because he's in the lineup, he's out of the lineup, he's always hurt. And it is what it is. But I will tell you what, I think you had mentioned that, some guys are just busts. Some guys are just ultimate busts. This was the top 5, prospect in all of baseball. But I'll tell you what, Nick, he has not been a bust in terms of his glove. Yeah. He is one of the smoothest third basemen that, I've seen in a long time in terms of what he can do over there. And he does have some value. It's just a shame that his bat has been so inconsistent probably because of his back. And I just wonder, what this offseason will mean for him. If the only way to fix it is some type of major surgery that will put him out for a longer period of time, but in the long run, maybe save his career, because getting in and out of the lineup all the time just doesn't work for him, because it goes from back, it goes down to his lower extremities, whether it's his groin or his hamstring. Until he gets that back right, we'll never see the full potential. And that could mean him being gone for an extended period of time. I'm just speculating, but it seems to me like you've got to do something major, which would also lead me to believe that you can't really move a Jake Burger. Now would be a great time to move a Jake Burger because of the way he's killing the ball. But I just think you're going to need to keep him to play third base eventually, because Moncada's, I think, going to need something done in the offseason.
If he needs something serious done, it's like, why wait? I mean, the Sox are out of it.
Right.
Do it now. Do it absolutely now. And yeah, Jake Burger it's such a curious case of Jake Burger. I'm not saying I want to get rid of Jake Burger. Okay. Sure, his average isn't there, but we obviously look at so many other numbers this day and age. He's hitting for power. I don't think his defense is hurting this team. He might not be as smooth as Moncada out there or agile, but he's now he's been playing second base. Okay. And he's trying to figure that out. maybe showcasing his versatility in case there is a potential trade. But I really want to know what is this organization? What is their plan? And if Jake Berger is in the fold, well, then how are you going to make that happen where he can play every day? And if it's at second, well, what does that mean for Lenyn Sosa or for Remillard or, other guys that you might have had flagged as like, well, second is their natural position. Sosa's hitting the cover off the
Why
ball.
would we put people at their natural position, Nick? We don't do that here.
Why start now?
Yeah.
I just thought maybe the second rebuild, we might want to try guys at like their actual positions instead of playing them out of position. Just
let's start the meeting off. Meeting everybody here. Thanks for getting the coffee and donuts, Rick. Great. I'd like to just suggest something. Maybe this time around we put people at their actual positions. That would be great. That's just my 2 cents.
Okay.
I'll let you take it from here.
You know what? I'm going to explore that. That's an interesting option. We don't want to commit right now, but I could see us maybe entertaining that when we get more heads around the table to discuss that as a fruitful opportunity for this organization moving forward. And by the way, there will be no Sox Fest 2024.
If you listen to enough Rick Hahn when he talks, he's got this really annoying like pause. You ever notice that? If you haven't, everybody that's listening to
him, I can't stand.
He'll talk, and then go
while he's nervously playing with like a water bottle cap or just trying to skirt questions, and he gives beat reporters a look sometimes like, how dare you ask me that? Even though it's such a logical, and I don't think they hammer away at him like they should hammer away, but I also think that they know that this organization probably would take their credentials away, or they would mute them in a way, or they don't have access to certain players when they want to do a profile piece, and they got to play nice. If you came out there and you just were swinging at Hahn every time that you had the opportunity, and you then requested a one-on-one with a player to do a piece or a podcast or something, do you think the PR department, the media relations, is going to be really quick to answer, your email or call? I just don't think so. It's such a different way. You better stay out of
White Sox business, quoting Kenny Williams from back in the day.
So, I mean, but yeah, it's I can't listen to Hahn talk. It infuriates me. He is, he's maddening, but he's going to continue to do this. I just don't see any accountability. I just don't see it at the end of the day. And besides Jake Berger, Pat, there are a lot of questions moving forward, and Michael Kopech was one of them. I thought so much more of Michael Kopech in the season that could be in 2023. And he started in the finale against Cleveland, and, not an impressive outing at all. Had issues with command and with the home run. And again, and here he is. I think it might've been a Tribune article talking about Kopech still looking for consistency. And when you bring all things back full circle and you want to talk rebuild and the second rebuild or the remodel, whatever, well, Kopech was that guy coming back to us, from the Chris Sale deal, of course, and a surefire, Jeff Passan saying he throws over 100 miles per hour. Oh my goodness, this guy is going to be a stud. Of course, that's what the optics were. That's what we all saw. And he wasn't the only one saying that. And for some reason, and then there's been injuries, there's been mental stuff, there's been, I don't have a lot of faith in Michael Kopech going forward. And, you say, well, maybe take him and put him in the bullpen. Just throw him in the bullpen. He's got the velocity. But if he has no command and he can't find the plate, what good are you coming in out of the bullpen, walking the first two guys and giving up a duck snort that scores runs?
Or coming in with runners on, even though he did come in, out of the bullpen a couple of years ago, I think it was, or maybe it was last year. Was it last year he was coming down out of the bullpen or doing like spot starts, whatever he was doing?
Yeah.
He was somewhat effective, but I'm with you. I'd rather have him be a starter. That's why he's here. The only thing I would say that it still gives me a little bit of faith in him is he's already exceeded the number of innings pitched that he's ever had in his career. I think right now he's just completely hit the wall and he's just trying to grind through the rest of the season. And, maybe now it's an opportunity for him to go and say, I've gotten through this. Now I've gotten through that wall, whether it was productive or not. And now I can really attack next year. So I've got a little bit more, maybe it's blind faith and stupid faith, but I would
You're
like
giving this guy a lot of rope, man. You're giving him a lot of rope.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'd like to see what
because you want it. You want to finally see
yes,
what we were
I want to
promise.
believe.
Sure.
I want to believe on that at least one of these things that we traded for that came back that was so highly coveted will actually pan out. So maybe it is blind faith.
And that's kind of at the end of the day all we have, as a diehard lifelong Sox fan, and I know all of us, listeners, folks that still watching and attending games, and when you hear a team, whether it's through Bob Nightingale or from something Hahn said about, well, it's not going to be a complete tear down, but because they still think they could be competitive in 2024. Well, you want to believe that that's the case, right? Because you want to see, fun, exciting, playoff worthy baseball. There's nothing more exciting than the playoff atmosphere. But who's pitching in 2024 right now? No. And okay, you're gonna change your way of doing things and go after starting pitching in the offseason. Okay, all right, show me. Prove it to me. Griffol's looking for players to prove it to him that they want to be around. Well, Sox organization, you prove to me, the fan, that you want me around attending games and watching games by how you construct a team in the offseason. Because right now, who do you have? Cease and Kopech and maybe Tuki Toussaint. And I don't even know about Kopech. He's a huge question mark. That's what you got right now in the rotation.
Garrett Crochet. Garrett Crochet.
He wants it. He
wants it.
He wants it. And I could want it. And you could want it. And that's great that you want it. But, buddy, you have had arm troubles this whole season. He's pitched, 10 innings this year in his big comeback from Tommy John. Where's the buildup? You've got to build yourself up to be in the starting rotation. I mean, that's kind of what happened with Chris Sale. Maybe it happens in the offseason in whatever kind of, organizational league. And I don't trust this organization to know how to build him up. I really don't. So it's great that you want it, but I don't know if you've had enough time to be able to get yourself ready for that.
Yeah. You know what just makes me sit back and smile, Nick, is how positive you and I are every Sunday and how much joy we must bring to people's evenings.
I think we bring more of the reality. We put a mirror up to the organization and say, look at what you did. Look at yourself. Look at what
Rick's
you've become.
Listening right now? You think Rick's on?
I have on good authority that he listens regularly.
Is that right?
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, this coming week you got the Rangers, and I think it's back into the AL Central. But again, the next time we talk, this team could look very different. I think there are pieces that could still be moved. There was a lot of chatter about Eloy Jimenez. Maybe Milwaukee's interested. Miami interested in Anderson. I think Grandal's off this team. Middleton, I don't know about Santos, but Middleton perhaps. It sounds like Cease is staying, and I've even heard Bummer is off limits.
Oh yes, yeah, they keep Aaron Bummer.
Wow,
why would you want to give that up?
Well, he gets unlucky, Pat. He offers up a lot of.
Well, I do agree with that. He is the most unlucky human in the world. I've never seen more balls hit straight down into the dirt that turn into doubles somehow. It's just amazing. But
so I don't know. We could again have a completely different team, and now it's just looking at what they are going to try to build in 2024, what the opportunities and options they have that they've received back, and trying to make predictions. It's going to be tough. It really is, and I think attention is going to understandably shift to the Chicago Bears if it has not already.
Yeah, well, it is Bears season, Nick. Training camp has started, and my my next favorite season is coming up too. Who do you pick as who to root for in the playoffs?
Oh, this old game.
Who's your playoff team to kind of get behind? So that's always a fun part of our season.
Well, I mean, if Cincinnati gets in, I could root for Cincinnati. There seem to be a fun team to watch. Baltimore, I can root for Baltimore. And then do you then kind of look in on former White Sox players? Like if Houston gets in, or you're rooting for Jose Abreu? No.
I'd rather if the Angels found a way, because I think they're 3 or 4 games out. Like Giolito, I would root for that. That's where I would be rooting for.
Yeah.
And Shohei Ohtani in the playoffs would be great.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Oh my goodness, the ratings. You got to get him. You got to get him into the postseason and beyond. Oh my goodness, MLB. They would love that. And he's just an amazing talent. I mean, I don't even know where to start. It's just a joy to watch. Well, Pat, always a pleasure, buddy. It's been therapeutic.
I'm glad I can help, Nick. Yeah. We'll pick up this session next week where we left off.
Sounds good, Doctor. Folks, thank you so much for jumping in the comments. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch up on past episodes and join us. Be ready for next Sunday. The audio available everywhere you find your podcasts. We're on Twitter at Good Guys TV. We've got a Facebook fan page. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.